Have you ever paused to wonder if you are truly the author of your own thoughts? We like to imagine ourselves as captains, steering our lives with clarity, as if our every decision, every desire, every sudden impulse springs from the conscious will we so proudly claim as me. Yet, beneath this polished surface, another reality stirs. A silent presence moves in the shadows of the mind, pulling strings we cannot see, shaping choices we think are free, weaving destinies we believe we control. This hidden force is not fantasy. It is the reality of the human psyche. And if there is one figure who dared to map its depths, to give voice to its mysteries, it was the Swiss psychiatrist Carl Gustav Jung. To speak of Jung is to step into a realm where psychology ceases to be mere clinical science and becomes a philosophy of the soul. He was not content with treating mental symptoms as if the human being were no more than a machine misfiring. He was not satisfied with helping people simply adjust to a society that was itself fractured, superficial, and ill. Jung sought something greater, a way to restore wholeness, to return human life to its forgotten depths, to reconnect us with meaning at a time when meaning seemed to be dissolving into dust. In the early 20th century, when the West was intoxicated with progress, technology, and rationality, Jung saw a different danger. He foresaw a spiritual crisis brewing beneath the triumph of modernity, a collapse, not of machines or empires, but of the human soul itself. And so, his life's work became the cartography of that inner world, the dreamscapes, the myths, the shadows, the archetypes, the unconscious foundations that shape us more than reason ever can. Consider this unsettling truth. You are not a blank slate. You are not merely a product of your childhood, nor solely the sum of your conscious choices. You carry within you an inheritance far older, far stranger, far deeper than your personal biography. Within the architecture of your psyche lie ancient patterns, primal forces, collective images that have been alive in humanity since the dawn of time. You are not just you. You are also the echo of thousands of lives before you. It is this daring vision that the human psyche is at once deeply personal and profoundly universal that made Jung one of the most revolutionary thinkers of the modern era. But to truly understand the magnitude of his contribution, we must first see him in the shadow of the man who was both his mentor and later his rival, Sigmund Freud. For it was in the split between Freud and Jung that the future of psychology itself took two radically different paths. Carl Jung did not begin as a rebel. He began as a disciple. When Jung first encountered the work of Sigmund Freud, he recognized in it a power and a courage rare in their age. Freud dared to look beneath the polished surface of Victorian morality and to say aloud what others would not. That human behavior is driven not by lofty ideals, but by the dark and often scandalous energy of repressed desire. He placed sexuality at the very center of the human psyche, insisting that our neuroses were the price we paid for the instincts we buried. To a world intoxicated with rational progress, Freud's theories were shocking, but also liberating. At last, someone was naming the hidden forces behind polite society, exposing the hypocrisy of repression, and unveiling the subterranean drives that whispered beneath the fragile mask of civilization. For a time, Jung stood by Freud's side as his chosen heir. Their correspondence was intense, their collaboration electric. Many believed that Jung would carry Freud's torch forward, securing the future of psychoanalysis. But there was a fracture, a fissure, that would soon widen into a permanent break. For Jung, the psyche was not so narrow a stage as Freud imagined. To reduce all of human striving, all myth and religion, all dreams and visions to the mechanics of sexuality seemed to Jung not only incomplete, but dangerously reductive. To Jung, the soul was far more than a cauldron of repressed instincts. It was an entire cosmos. Jung began to see patterns Freud ignored. In the dreams of his patients, in the myths of ancient cultures, in the religious symbolism that reappeared across civilizations, he detected something Freud could not explain away. There were images, narratives, and figures that seemed to repeat themselves, regardless of personal history, universal motifs that were not born of childhood repression, but of something far deeper. These he would call archetypes, and the reservoir from which they emerged he would call the collective unconscious. Freud insisted that the unconscious was personal, a hidden chamber of forgotten memories and forbidden desires. Jung insisted it was larger, older, shared. Just as humanity shares a biological inheritance in the shape of the body, so too do we share a psychic inheritance in the architecture of the mind. This was the decisive break. For Freud, religion was an illusion, myth a childish projection, and dreams mere disguises of instinct. For Jung, religion was a symbolic language of the soul, myth the eternal story of humankind, and dreams a direct message from the unconscious. To follow Jung was to step onto a path that led not merely into psychiatry, but into philosophy, theology, anthropology, even alchemy. It was to expand psychology into a universal map of meaning. The break with Freud came at a heavy cost. Once admired as Freud's successor, Jung was cast out of the psychoanalytic circle. He endured years of isolation, doubt, and even the terrifying descent into his own unconscious, chronicled in the visionary pages of his Red Book. But out of that crucible, Jung emerged with a vision of psychology unlike any the world had seen, a psychology that refused to reduce the soul to mechanics, and instead honored it as the most profound mystery of existence. From this divergence, from Freud's world of repression and instinct, and Jung's world of symbols and wholeness, arose the foundations of what Jung would call analytical psychology. And at the heart of this new psychology stand the great pillars of his thought: the collective unconscious, the archetypes, the shadow, individuation, and the language of dreams. To grasp the depth of Jung's vision, we must step carefully through the 5 great pillars upon which his psychology rests. These are not abstract theories meant only for scholars. They are living realities, forces that shape each of us whether we acknowledge them or not. To understand them is to hold a mirror to the soul itself. At the foundation lies Jung's most daring idea, the collective unconscious. Freud taught that each person's unconscious is a private reservoir of forgotten experiences and forbidden desires. But Jung looked deeper. He saw that, beneath the personal unconscious, there exists a shared psychic layer, inherited rather than acquired, universal rather than individual. Just as the human body carries within it the imprint of our evolutionary ancestors, so too does the human mind carry within it the imprints of countless generations. These are not memories of specific events, but patterns, potentials, images, a psychic inheritance common to all humanity. Consider how children across cultures draw the same basic figures: the hero, the wise elder, the nurturing mother, the lurking monster. Consider how myths from Greece and Egypt echo those from India, China, or the Americas, though separated by oceans and centuries. The similarity is no accident. It is the expression of a shared psychic ground. The collective unconscious is that deep ground, the ancient soil from which all myths, religions, and symbols grow. From this soil arise the archetypes. An archetype is not a specific character or story. It is a universal pattern, an eternal mold that shapes countless forms. Just as the idea of motherhood exists beyond any particular mother, so the archetypal mother exists beyond any individual. She appears as Isis in Egypt, as Demeter in Greece, as Mary in Christianity, as countless nurturing or devouring figures across time. The hero who ventures into darkness, the shadow that threatens from within, the wise old man who offers guidance, the anima and animus, the inner feminine and masculine that dwell within each psyche. These are not inventions of culture. They are primordial forms etched into the human soul. We do not create archetypes. We encounter them. They rise in our dreams, in our stories, in our relationships. They are the invisible directors behind the stage of consciousness. To live without recognizing them is to be ruled by them blindly. To become aware of them is to step into dialogue with the forces that have guided humanity for millennia. Among the archetypes, none is more urgent and more dangerous than the shadow. The shadow is everything we reject in ourselves. It is the anger we deny, the envy we suppress, the impulses we hide from the light of day. It is the part of us that contradicts the persona, the mask we present to society. But the shadow is not only negative. It also contains potential, creativity, strength, and vitality, all the qualities we disown because they do not fit our image of who we believe we are. When the shadow is denied, it festers. It takes control in moments of rage, prejudice, cruelty. Entire nations, Jung warned, can fall under the possession of their collective shadow, projecting their darkness onto others, unleashing violence and tyranny. But when the shadow is faced with honesty, it becomes a source of renewal. By admitting our hidden desires, our repressed fears, our unacknowledged flaws, we reclaim wholeness. The confrontation with the shadow is terrifying, but it is also the first step toward freedom. As Jung wrote, one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. If the shadow confronts us with our darkness, individuation calls us toward our wholeness. Individuation is the central task of life, the process of becoming who we truly are, not the self we pretend to be, not the mask society demands, not the collection of roles we perform, but the deeper self, the totality of our being. The path of individuation is not a straight road. It is a spiral journey that requires us to descend into the unconscious, to wrestle with the shadow, to encounter the archetypes, and to reconcile the opposites within us. Masculine and feminine, rational and irrational, conscious and unconscious, all must be brought into dialogue. Individuation is not about perfection. It is about integration. To individuate is to no longer be split, no longer exiled from parts of ourselves, no longer a stranger to our own soul. It is to stand in the fullness of what we are, both light and dark, both wound and gift. This journey is not optional. If we refuse it, life will force it upon us through crisis, conflict, and suffering. Midlife breakdowns, existential despair, inexplicable depression, all are signs that the psyche demands growth, demands wholeness, demands the path of individuation. To ignore that call is to live in half-light, forever haunted by the unlived life within us. The final pillar is the dream, the royal road, as Jung called it. To the unconscious, dreams are not random noise. They are not meaningless byproducts of brain activity. They are messages crafted in the language of symbols, delivered each night from the depths of the psyche. Where Freud saw dreams as disguised wish fulfillments, Jung saw them as communications from the self-guidance, warnings, compensations for the imbalances of waking life. A person who ignores their dreams ignores the voice of their own soul. A person who attends to them gains access to wisdom beyond the limits of reason. The dream of a snake may not be merely a fear of danger, but the ancient symbol of transformation. The dream of flying may not be wishful fantasy, but the image of transcendence, of release from what confines us. Dreams speak in myth, in symbol, in the archetypal tongue of the collective unconscious. To study them is to re-enter the conversation humanity has held with its own depths since the beginning of time. These 5 pillars, the collective unconscious, the archetypes, the shadow, individuation, and the dream, form the architecture of Jung's psychology. They are not theories to be debated and forgotten. They are realities to be lived, forces to be recognized, journeys to be undertaken. For to neglect them is not to escape them. It is only to be ruled by them blindly, stumbling through life as if walking in darkness. But to acknowledge them is to awaken to see the patterns that shape us, to face the darkness that terrifies us, and to begin, at last, the journey toward wholeness. Why should we concern ourselves with Jung today? After all, we live in an age of dazzling technology, instant communication, and scientific power that would have seemed miraculous to Jung's own generation. We have mapped the human genome, probed the far reaches of space, and built machines that rival the mind itself. What use is a psychology filled with myths and archetypes in such a world? The answer is simple and sobering. because beneath the glittering surface of progress, the human soul is in crisis. Look around. Anxiety, depression, loneliness, and despair have become the silent epidemics of modern life. We drown in information, yet starve for meaning. We are connected by networks, yet severed from one another in spirit. We celebrate endless choice, yet wander aimlessly, unsure of who we are or what we are here for. Jung foresaw this. He warned that a civilization obsessed with outer mastery, but blind to inner truth, would collapse into emptiness. He saw that modern humanity, in its pride, was cutting itself off from the very roots of its own psyche, repressing the shadow, dismissing dreams, mocking myths, and treating the soul as an illusion. The result is not freedom, but alienation. We see it in the restless pursuit of distraction, the compulsive hunger for novelty, the endless chase after possessions, status, and digital applause. These are not signs of health. They are symptoms of a void where meaning should be, a void created by the exile of the soul. Here lies the relevance of Jung. He does not offer us a quick fix, a simple formula, or a motivational slogan. He offers something much harder and infinitely more precious, the invitation to turn inward, to confront the shadow rather than project it onto others, to listen to our dreams rather than dismiss them as noise, to rediscover the myths that once gave shape to human life, to undertake the path of individuation, however arduous, however long. In an age that glorifies speed, Jung calls us to patience. In a culture of surfaces, he calls us to depth. In a world of distraction, he calls us to silence. His psychology is not a relic of the past. It is a prophecy for the present. It is a mirror held up to a civilization that has lost its balance, a reminder that no amount of external progress can compensate for inner neglect. Consider the state of our collective shadow. Wars born of fear and hatred. Violence against the earth itself, as if nature were an enemy to be conquered rather than a home to be honored. The rise of movements that thrive on projection, scapegoating others for the darkness we refuse to face within ourselves. These are not accidents. They are what happens when the shadow is ignored. Or consider the hunger for archetypes in a secular age. Why do superheroes dominate our stories? Why do epic sagas grip our imagination? Because the archetypes will not die. They return, clothed in modern costume, reminding us of the eternal patterns we carry within. And what of our dreams? How many dismiss them, waking each morning to scroll through glowing screens while the messages of the night slip away, forgotten? Yet those messages are gifts maps drawn by the unconscious, meant to guide us toward balance and wholeness. Jung's voice is urgent precisely because it is timeless. He reminds us that the soul cannot be mechanized, cannot be silenced, cannot be outgrown. Ignore it, and it will erupt in symptoms, in crises, in despair. Honor it, and it will lead us toward meaning, toward renewal, toward life that is whole. This is why Jung matters now more than ever. Because we have mastered the external world, yet remain strangers to ourselves. Because we have conquered nature, yet lost touch with our own nature. Because in the race for progress, we have forgotten what it means to be human. And so, the question before us is not whether Jung's ideas are old or new, fashionable or unfashionable. The question is whether we will have the courage to face ourselves, to descend into the depths we have avoided, to listen to the voice within, to begin again the journey of the soul. For if we do not, no amount of progress will save us. But if we do, if we heed Jung's call, we may yet find that in the very darkness we fear lies the light we have long been seeking. You have spent your life searching for acceptance, for security, for belonging. You learned to wear the mask of strength even when you were in pieces. You learned to smile even when your soul was silently crying for help. Somewhere along the way, in the rush to fit in the struggle to survive, you forgot. You forgot the mystery that once lived in your eyes. You forgot the restless spark that once burned in your heart. You forgot your soul. And yet something in you has begun to awaken. That is not an accident. Jung believed that nothing in life is mere coincidence. Even the most unexpected encounters, even the smallest signs, are movements of the unconscious. And perhaps this very moment, this very message, is one of those signs. A call to stop running, a call to stop numbing yourself with distractions, a call to turn inward and face the depths you have ignored. But make no mistake, this path is not easy. Jung's psychology is not a comfortable self-help formula. It is a descent into truth. And truth is not painless. To meet yourself is to confront your shadow, to strip away the illusions that protected you, to see your envy, your fear, your cruelty, your weakness, to see also your strength, your creativity, your hidden fire. To see, at last, that you are not simply light nor simply darkness. You are both, together, indivisible. This process, Jung called individuation. It is not about becoming perfect. It is about becoming whole. It is not about rising above the human condition. It is about embracing it fully. To individuate is to accept the collapse of the false self so that the deeper self may emerge. It is the breaking of masks, the death of illusions, the rebirth of authenticity. Yes, it will hurt. Yes, it will demand everything. But what is the alternative? To remain asleep? To repeat the same patterns forever? To let the shadow drive your life in silence, while you call it fate? Individuation is not reserved for mystics or philosophers. It is the birthright of every human being. And if you are listening now, it may already have begun. Every crisis you have endured, every relationship that shattered, every identity that collapsed, all of it was not meaningless suffering. It was initiation. It was the unconscious trying to wake you, to break you free, to bring you home. Jung said, "The meeting with oneself is, at first, the meeting with one's own shadow. The encounter is a trial of courage. The pain is real, but only there does the path to the self begin. The self, not the ego, not the mask, but the living center of the soul. That is what waits for you. That is what has been calling you all along. And so the question is no longer, who am I? The question is, am I willing to find out? This video is not the end of that journey. It is the beginning. If you feel something stirring inside you, confusion, curiosity, even fear, that is the signal. That is the voice of your unconscious, whispering that it is time. Time to face the shadow. Time to listen to your dreams. Time to stop pretending and start becoming. The path of individuation is long. It will test you, but it will also give you the one thing: no distraction, no possession, no mask can ever offer. Freedom. The freedom of being whole. The freedom of living a life that is truly yours. So take a breath, look honestly within, and remember, you are not broken. You are not lost. You are simply unfinished. And the rest of the journey begins now. If these words touched you, if they stirred something in the depths you usually ignore, do not let it fade. Write it down, speak it aloud, share it. For in bringing the unconscious into the light, you have already taken the first step. And if you wish to continue this descent, to keep unfolding the map Jung has left for us, then do not stop here. The next video, the next dream, the next confrontation with your own depths, all of it is part of the same path. The only question that remains is, will you dare to walk it? Because once you do, nothing will ever look the same again.